Hello, my name is Claire Alden, and this is the story of how my own family at my father's birthday decided I wasn't worthy of a seat at their table. They smiled, handed me a paper plate, and pointed me toward the patio, while my sister soaked in the applause for building an empire I quietly helped fund. But that night, something changed. Not in them and me, because being underestimated is exhausting until it becomes fuel. Happy birthday, sweetheart, now go sit outside. The words didn't land like a joke. They sliced through the ambient clink of crystal glasses and murmurs of polite conversation like a dull, deliberate insult, public, precise, and without remorse. I stood there holding a carefully wrapped box with navy ribbon frozen just long enough for Tamara to flash me her pageant smile and gesture toward the far end of the lawn. "I thought you'd prefer the fresh air?" she added sweetly before turning back to the guests without waiting for a response. I glanced around. The estate was glowing with late afternoon sun, and the Alden mansion, my family's monument to legacy, stretched wide behind the patio, its windows reflecting the gold of early autumn. Tables dotted the lawn, arranged by some invisible hierarchy. The closer to the French doors, the closer to relevance. Mine apparently was somewhere near the hedges where the waitstaff parked their carts. A white folding chair waited by a table of nobodies, plus one's distant cousins, and that one guy who always claimed to be a Forbes consultant, but wasn't listed anywhere. I walked toward my assigned exile, each step echoing that line in my head. "Happy birthday, sweetheart, now go sit outside." The last time I felt this small at a family function, I was 11. There was a photo from that day still framed in our old lake house. In it, Tamara stood in the center, arms thrown around our parents' cake in the foreground. I was visible only at the margin, half a face and a blurry hand already cut off by the camera's judgment of who mattered. Riley's text buzzed in my pocket. "You there yet? Don't let them get to you." Easy for her to say. She wasn't standing under the Alden crest while guests whispered about who I was and why I didn't look like I belonged. I sat carefully smoothing my charcoal slacks and resting the box on my lap. It held a first edition of Dad's favorite economist, something I'd tracked down through a retired professor in Rhode Island. It would probably end up collecting dust in some corner he never walked past. Tamara's voice rang out from the stage. "As we celebrate my father, the visionary who built Alden Holdings into the cornerstone it is, today I want to reflect on the values he passed down. Here it comes. The importance of strategy, of consistency, of legacy." Her eyes scanned the crowd like a CEO inspecting a merger, skipping over me entirely. "My sister couldn't make it today," she added suddenly, with a soft chuckle that triggered polite laughter. "Claire's always chasing something. The win, perhaps." Another laugh. "We wish her the best." A pause. And then Tamara, a man near me, muttered, "Who's the woman by the hedges?" "Dunno. Freelancer or family friend," another replied. The laughter returned to my ears like feedback. I kept my hands folded, my eyes forward. I told myself I wouldn't react. I'd come to keep the peace, to be civil. But when I heard my mother's voice behind the champagne table, low but too careless to hide, "She's just not settled. Still bouncing around. Every few months, a new idea," Dad added. "At least Tamara's dependable." My throat tightened, but I swallowed it. All of it. Then came the low hum. A sound not from the party, but above it. A sharp chop of air. Guests began looking skyward, hands shielding eyes. Silver sliced through the sky like a blade, sleek, humming unapologetic. The helicopter circled once, then began its descent. Dust swirled, tablecloths fluttered, people stood. Napkins blew away. Champagne flutes tipped. The pilot's voice cracked over the comms, audible to every guest with ears. "Confirming passenger pickup for Claire Alden. Miss Claire Alden." It was the way he said it, clearly, deliberately, like a name that belonged on every invitation. A hush swept the lawn. I rose slowly, brushing off invisible lint, straightening the lapels of my jacket. The silence stretched. From the stage, Tamara stared, her hand still clutching the edge of her cue cards. Eyes wide, jaw slightly parted. Claire stood up, adjusted her blazer, and walked away right in the middle of Tamara's speech. The crowd broke into murmurs. Tamara was frozen. I wasn't invisible. I was just strategically silent. The city outside my window hummed with its usual rhythm horns, sirens, distant conversations echoing between glass towers. But inside my apartment, the quiet was thick. The kind that only comes after a day you want to bottle and bury. I sat on the couch. My shoes kicked off, hair loosened, the gift I'd brought still unopened on the side table, like a metaphor for everything left unacknowledged. Riley stood by the kitchen counter, swirling wine in one hand and wearing that look, the one that meant she was carefully deciding whether to comfort or scold me. "I can't believe they actually made you sit outside," she said at last. "I can," I replied deadpan. "It's not even in the top 5. She raised an eyebrow. I exhaled slowly. "Remember Tamara's high school science fair? The one with the revolutionary solar panel made from soda cans?" Riley nodded, sipping. "I built the prototype," I said. She gave the presentation, flubbed half the terminology, but still won. "I wasn't even listed on the credits. When I asked our dad why, he said support roles matter too, Claire. Be proud she included you at all." Riley flinched. "And college," I continued. "Every time I tried something different, architecture, marketing, coding, it was, Claire can't commit to anything, while Tamara changed majors twice and still got a party." "You did commit," Riley countered, voice low. "To yourself. That takes more guts than pretending to be perfect." I offered a faint smile, then reached over to the side table, pulling out the thin leather folder I hadn't yet opened since it arrived via courier 3 days ago. The handwriting on the envelope had been unmistakable, Halden's crisp, sharp, deliberate. My hands hovered over it for a beat. "He told me not to open this until I was ready." Riley nodded, saying nothing. I peeled back the flap. Inside, a notarized letter, and a final line written in Halden's signature ink. "Claire, you were always the architect." It's time they saw the blueprint. The legal language was precise. I scanned it once, then again, slower. Ownership confirmation, transfer documents, strategic control, 70%, Horizon real assets, mine. I sat back, breath caught somewhere between my ribs and throat. Riley leaned forward. "Is that—" I nodded. "He made me majority stakeholder. Years ago, apparently. It was locked behind trust conditions that lifted last quarter." The weight of it settled in slowly. My mentor. The man who first called me a strategist. The only one who asked what I wanted to build instead of what I was trying to prove. He hadn't just believed in me. He'd bet everything on me. "You're not some drifter with a laptop anymore," Riley said, reading my thoughts. "You run the table now." "No." I stared at the folder. "I build the table." I rose, crossed to my desk, and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then moved with a steadiness I didn't expect. Folder Horizon Strategy, Phase 2, File Reorg Tier.docs. I opened it, updated it, labeled it, final. It was time. Everything that came next would be deliberate. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Control. Rebalancing. My cursor blinked against a white screen as I outlined meeting agendas, board structure realignment, and messaging priorities. The facade they'd built that Claire was flaky, unpredictable, and outlier wasn't just insulting. It was fragile, and I had the leverage now to break it. Riley reappeared at my shoulder, handing me the wineglass. I didn't take it. My inbox pinged. From exechorizonassets.com, subject meeting request, Northwell Group, Tamara Alden, liaison private strategic discussion proposed 11:00 a.m. Monday. I stared at the screen. "Northwell wants a private meeting," I said quietly. "And Tamara's the liaison." They thought they buried me. I was just taking root. The host barely looked up when I gave my name. A brief nod, and he gestured toward the rear of the dining room, where a man in a crisp gray suit was already nursing a martini and checking his watch with the self-importance of someone convinced the world revolved around his inbox. Douglas Vance, Northwell's Vice President of Strategic Expansion. The kind of man who thought a 3-piece suit and a spreadsheet could fix culture. I walked toward him, heels silent against the polished wood. He didn't stand, just glanced up, blinked, and said, "You must be Claire." His tone landed somewhere between indifference and condescension. "I must be," I replied evenly, sliding into the seat opposite him. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he reached for his glass. "Tamara said you'd be joining us. Assumed you were her analyst, or—" Assistant. I tilted my head slightly, folding my hands on the table. Did she? He smirked, clearly missing the undercurrent. No offense, of course. We just prefer speaking directly with executive leadership when discussing acquisition terms. I gave him a moment. Let the silence sit. Vance cleared his throat and continued. Now I understand Horizon is in a bit of a transitional phase. Tamara suggested your team might be open to a soft absorption model, keeping a few divisions, sunsetting the rest. We'd offer generous severance and performance bonuses naturally. I raised an eyebrow. That's a curious proposal. Well, your platform has potential, he said, swirling his drink, but let's be honest, it's flailing without the infrastructure Northwell can provide. My smile didn't reach my eyes. And which aspect of our platform are you referring to, specifically? He blinked. Excuse me. The data layer. Our tiered processing logic. Or perhaps our distributed deployment model. Vance's forehead creased slightly. Well, I'm sure your engineers, because if you're referencing our DevOps pipeline, I continued calmly, you should know we moved off container-based orchestration 6 months ago. Our current latency benchmarks outperform even Northwell's internal platform by 17% according to your last published report. He paused, drink halfway to his lips. I leaned in. Tamara didn't send her assistant Mr. Vance. She sent the person who built Horizon's architecture from the ground up. Something shifted behind his eyes. He set the glass down slower this time. Your lead engineering, no, I said, and let the moment breathe. I'm the CEO. He blinked twice. The transformation in his demeanor was almost cinematic. The posture straightened. The tone recalibrated. Apologies, he said stiffly. I wasn't aware. That much is clear. He coughed lightly and picked up his phone as if to check a non-existent notification. Had I known? Tamara never mentioned. She rarely does, I replied. It's not in her interest to highlight what she can't control. He managed a weak chuckle. Well, this certainly changes the nature of our conversation, does it? I asked. I thought we were discussing business. Another pause. Then more cautiously, may I ask what you envision for Horizon's future? I reached into my bag, retrieved a small folio, and slid it across the table. Vance opened it. Strategic expansion roadmap, market forecasts, partnership models. At the bottom, proposal independent growth via strategic partnerships, lead negotiator Claire Alden. I don't accept buyouts, I said quietly. I propose partnerships. He read in silence for a few beats. This is aggressive. It's realistic. We don't need saving. We need reach. He stared at me, calculating. Northwell wasn't expecting this approach. I imagine not. But you'll find it's not just the smarter option. It's the inevitable one. Just then, Riley appeared behind me. She'd arrived on cue as planned, her expression unreadable and posture sharp. I didn't introduce her. I didn't need to. She slid into the seat beside me and placed her phone on the table screen, glowing with a live financial dashboard. Horizon's numbers pulsed upward. Vance noticed. His hand twitched slightly. He leaned back, lips pressed tight. I'll need to discuss this with our senior partners, he muttered. Of course, I said, rising to stand, and I'll expect a follow-up by Wednesday. I'll have my office send the NDA this afternoon. Vance remained seated, fingers already moving across his phone. I didn't need to see the screen to know who he was messaging. He stared down, typing furiously. Why didn't you tell me your sister is the CEO of Horizon? If you want them to listen, let the silence stretch first. The fog outside my office window blurred the skyline into abstraction. Manhattan looked less like a city and more like a secret. It suited the day. The phone buzzed once, then again. Riley leaned against the doorframe, her coffee still steaming. You're not going to pick that up. I'm letting it ring, I murmured. Halden always said to let silence do the heavy lifting. She arched an eyebrow but didn't push. The screen flashed with the name I'd been waiting for, Franklin Bell, my personal counsel since before Horizon had a name. I finally lifted the phone. Claire, he said, brisk as ever, it's done. All formalities completed. You now hold controlling interest in the legacy fund and its subsidiaries. Your authority is undisputed. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. and the registration updates filed and time-stamped. Any challenge now would be retroactive. You're secure. Behind the legalese, I could feel the weight of it. I now controlled the mechanism that shaped the Alden family legacy quietly, legally, irreversibly. Good, I said, swallowing the mix of power and grief. Now initiate the next step. Franklin paused. Acquisition phase, yes. All dormant Alden-held properties listed under expired trusts, we buy them back. Use the shell company we set up last quarter. No identifiers, no family ties. I'll have the purchase orders executed by end of week. I ended the call and turned to Riley. She handed me her cup without needing to ask. So, it's real, she said. You're not just controlling Horizon, you're holding the family's bloodline portfolio. I nodded. They spent decades building a narrative that I was disposable. Let's see how they handle irrelevance. On my laptop screen, a familiar ping broke the stillness. An email notification. From Tamara. Subject caution. I opened it slowly. The message was short-clipped. Claire, I don't know what you're playing at, but let me be clear. Legacy decisions have consequences. I strongly suggest you step back before this gets ugly. You've been out of your depth before. Don't drown again. T. Riley read it over my shoulder and whistled low. Passive aggression served, chilled. She suspects, I said, but she doesn't know, yet. I forwarded the email to Franklin without comment, then turned to the file I had labeled, but never opened until now, Fund Reclamation, Stage 3. I dragged it into the active planning folder and double-checked the timestamps. Everything was lined up: legal authority, financial consolidation, asset repositioning. The next step required precision, not noise. I clicked through to the secure government portal and began the filing. The application to declare official control over the legacy investment vehicle, the fund that had until recently been chaired by a rotating group of family nominees. No longer. With my legal leverage and Halden's original silent endorsements now fully activated, I had the foundation to do more than retaliate. I was about to redefine the Alden inheritance. As I reviewed the final digital document, the cursor blinked beneath my signature block. A small prompt appeared. Submit. My finger hovered. Once I clicked, the ripples would be immediate. Riley stood still across the room, eyes locked on mine. You sure? They always said I didn't belong in the room, I murmured. I'm about to own the building. I hit submit. The screen flashed. Filing received. Timestamp 10:12 a.m. A moment later, my phone lit up again. This time, Franklin's voice was low but sharp. If this declaration goes public, Claire, your family won't just be angry. They'll be in freefall. When you walk away from the table, make sure they feel the absence. The rooftop had been transformed. Spotlights bounced off sleek glass partitions. Horizon's logo shimmered on a digital banner looping overhead. Crisp white linens fluttered over standing cocktail tables, and the skyline beyond served as a living backdrop. A reminder that we belong to this city now, not just beneath its weight, but above it. I stood near the edge, the cool breeze wrapping around my bare arms, as Riley fastened a microphone to the collar of my navy blazer. You ready? She asked. I looked toward the crowd, our developers, analysts, board members, a smattering of press and potential partners. They weren't here out of obligation. They were here to listen. To me. More than ready, I said. The MC gave a subtle nod and the ambient music faded. All eyes turned to the stage. I stepped forward. Good evening. I began, my voice steady, despite the flicker of adrenaline. When Horizon was founded, it wasn't built to be loud. It wasn't born from a viral idea or overnight funding. It was built quietly, deliberately. Line by line of code. Page by page of strategy. It wasn't designed to disrupt, it was designed to endure. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Tonight, we're not just celebrating growth, I continued. We're celebrating alignment. Legacy, after all, is not what you inherit. It's what you choose to leave behind. Somewhere to my left, I noticed Douglas Vance speaking with a few investors. He caught my eye, raised his glass subtly. I returned the gesture. I moved toward the heart of the announcement. Earlier this month, Horizon began exploratory talks with Northwell regarding a strategic partnership. I'm proud to share those talks have evolved. Cameras clicked, phones lifted. This isn't an acquisition, I said, voice firm. This is a joint venture. Horizon remains independent, but will be the lead architecture behind Northwell's next-generation data integration model. Together, we're redefining what resilience looks like in financial infrastructure. A ripple of reaction surged through the room. Vance stepped forward beside me, offering a few words to affirm the collaboration. He praised Horizon's innovation, our clarity of vision. I let him speak. His presence alone reinforced the shift in perception. I was no longer a name in the margins. I was the signature at the bottom of the page. And then, of course, she appeared. Tamara moved through the crowd like a blade through silk. Impeccably dressed posture, impossibly composed. A few guests turned to greet her out of habit, but the attention didn't stick. Not like before. She scanned the space until her eyes locked with mine. I watched her expression shift when she saw Vance standing beside me, when she saw the flash of recognition in the eyes of the crowd, the deference in their posture. She hadn't been invited, but she'd come anyway. Riley, noticing, made a subtle move toward her. I raised a hand. Let her watch. A reporter near the front stepped closer. Ms. Alden, he called out. Just to clarify, are you now acting CEO of Horizon Real Assets? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I'm the CEO of Horizon Real Assets. Flashes exploded across the rooftop. The moment etched itself into dozens of lenses ready to ripple through headlines by morning. Tamara stood still, her jaw tight. She didn't speak, just turned slowly and walked toward the elevator. As she passed, she didn't look at me, but I heard her voice low and sharp. This isn't over. 2 weeks ago, I was the ghost at their party. Today, I own the building. The morning sun filtered through the glass atrium of Horizon's new headquarters, the same marble-tiled lobby that had once housed the Alden Investment Division's secondary office, the same space where I had once delivered coffee to Tamara and her entourage during college breaks. Now it was mine. Riley walked a step behind me, her heels echoing slightly as we approached the waiting press line. My legal team stood ready, flanking the display screen that showed a simple slide facility transition, Horizon Real Assets, October 2023. Still surreal, she murmured. I gave a small nod. It should be. That's how you know it's real. A hush settled as I took the podium. Good morning, I said, scanning the room. Today marks a new era for Horizon. Not because we moved offices, but because we redefined what those offices mean. I paused just long enough to let the silence stretch. Then I continued. We have officially acquired the entirety of 380 Lexington Avenue, formerly managed under the Alden Holdings Real Estate Trust. This building was once a symbol of exclusion for me. Now it will be the beating heart of innovation for Horizon's next decade. I watched a flicker of surprise pass across the faces of the media and employees alike. Some had suspected something big. No one had guessed this. Our vision remains the same, I added. But now our foundation is wholly ours. A ripple of clicks from reporters followed some murmurs beginning to swirl as emails and alerts confirmed the press release had gone live front page on Bloomberg just as we'd timed it. The headline, Former Alden Property, Acquired by Horizon CEO Claire Alden in Private Deal. Riley nudged her phone toward me. Tamara's seen it. How do you know she just emailed you? Subject, this is war. I opened it. Claire, your recent actions constitute an illegal seizure of family trust assets. I strongly advise you to reconsider before legal proceedings are initiated. You've made your point. Don't push further. Tamara. I raised my eyebrows, handing the phone back to Riley. She's rattled. She's playing scared now. Riley said, lips curling into a grin. She knows what this means. And she's right, I said almost thoughtfully. This was a declaration of war. I just declared it in marble and steel. Later that afternoon, Lisa joined me in the main conference room. She brought updated transition documents and handed me a new security badge. This still has the old building name, she said. Did you want to keep it? No, I replied. That legacy's over. I picked up the marker and crossed out the old brass signage mock-up. Then, in clean capital letters, I wrote, The Halden Pavilion. Lisa paused. You sure he built the principles we operate on? I said. He deserves the front door. The building crew would have the new plaques installed by next Monday. That night, I stood alone on the top floor overlooking the skyline. There was no nostalgia, only clarity. The voicemail light on my phone blinked red. I played the message. Elaine's voice, cold and composed, cut through the static. "What do you think you're doing?" The silence from Tamara was louder than any threat. It had been 4 days since the press release. No calls, no counter statements, no retaliation, not even an insincere public gesture. From Tamara, nothing. It was the quietest she'd ever been, and that silence hung like a taut wire ready to snap. I sat in the strategy room at Horizon, a cavernous space with walls of glass and a view of the city that seemed to stretch forever. But my eyes weren't on the skyline, they were on the screen. Spreadsheets, shareholder charts, a color-coded map of the Alden family's dwindling influence. Riley hovered near the whiteboard, adding new red dots as we identified each micro-stake quietly shifted to us. "She's lost 4% this week alone," Riley said. "Friends cashing out or switching sides." "Doesn't matter," I replied. "The net result is the same." The financial advisory team dialed in from Boston, their faces tired but focused. "As of this morning," one analyst began, "you now control 51% of the Horizon-linked trust assets. Tamara's network of affiliates is down to 18%, possibly less." I leaned back, letting the numbers settle. Vance's face appeared in the corner of the Zoom grid. "Claire," he said, "if this structure goes public, she's finished. She won't just lose the family vote, she'll lose her seat entirely." I nodded slowly. "That's not my goal. I'm not looking to disgrace her." "But you're willing to make her irrelevant," Riley said dryly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The board didn't respond to scandal. They responded to power shifts. This wasn't about humiliation. This was about silence. Structural, institutional, irreversible silence. Vance broke the lull. "There's an alternative, a joint venture. Horizon leads, Northwell co-develops. You retain decision rights, she saves face." "That's generous," I said, then turned to Riley. "You proposed something similar last week?" She shrugged. "It's a cleaner kill, that's all." I smirked. No need to fight her. Just make her irrelevant. Everyone paused, digesting the words. Before we could wrap the session, a sharp beep came from the printer behind me. Riley picked up the single sheet of paper as it slid out. Her eyebrows arched. "That didn't take long." She handed it to me. At the top, letterhead from Madison and Klein, LLP. At the center, bold black text, "Intent to sue for breach of family trust." Control isn't about power, it's about leverage. The meeting room at Horizon's top floor was unusually quiet for a morning like this. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual relentless pace. But inside, only the soft hum of the HVAC system filled the air. I stood at the head of the long walnut table flanked by Riley and Lisa, while the other seats were occupied by representatives from 4 major investment groups and my legal counsel. Their faces were neutral, unreadable, but their pens were ready. This, I began, sliding a bound file across the table, is a notarized copy of Halden J. Alden's final amendment to the Alden Legacy Trust. Dated January 2020. Certified in the presence of 2 witnesses and a registered notary from the state of New York. A few brows lifted. One of the fund managers flipped open the document and began scanning. My name, I continued, appears as the primary successor trustee with full rights of asset disposition and reinvestment control. Across from me, one man raised his hand. "Forgive the bluntness, Ms. Alden, but we've dealt with legacy transitions before. They're rarely so clean." I nodded. "That's why we brought counsel." My attorney leaned forward. "The signature has been verified against archived samples and confirmed via forensic handwriting analysis. We also have video confirmation from the notary's office, time-stamped and logged." Riley tapped her tablet. "I've just uploaded the verification files to your secure folders." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the woman from Hawthorne Global nodded slowly. "We're satisfied. Effective immediately, our position aligns with Ms. Alden's strategic authority." The others followed nearly in sync. Just as I exhaled, the door burst open. Tamara. Her heels clacked against the polished floor, hair pulled back too tightly, smile razor sharp. "Apologies for the intrusion," she said smoothly, ignoring the surprised looks. "But I believe there's been a misunderstanding." I didn't flinch. That contract, she said, walking up to the table and pointing at the file, is a fabrication. Halden never would have signed that. Not without notifying the family. Certainly not without me. One of the fund reps cleared his throat. It's already been authenticated, Miss Alden. She gave a tight laugh. You think authentication can't be faked? I didn't respond. Instead, I motioned to Riley, who pressed a button on the tablet. A second document appeared on the wall-mounted screen. This, I said quietly, is the notarization log from the Manhattan Recorder's Office, January 16, 2020. Witnessed by Lisa Sandoval and Harold Warner. Video stored off-site. Lisa stood. I was there, Tamara. Halden knew exactly what he was doing. Tamara's expression hardened. She turned to the room. You're all just going to accept this on face value. One of the investors stood. We follow contracts, Ms. Alden, not sentiment. The power dynamic shifted in a breath. Tamara glanced at me, her voice lowered but still sharp. I hope you're ready to run this alone, because you just burned the bridge. Winning is easy. Withstanding the backlash, that's where the real battle begins. By dawn, my phone had already exploded. A half-dozen missed calls. Notifications from every business news app I'd ever installed. Headlines screaming variations of the same narrative. Heiress hijacks legacy trust. And CEO Claire Alden, accused of exploiting legal loopholes. Riley stood by the window of my office, tablet in hand, scrolling through social media feeds with a neutral face that masked rising concern. I sat motionless, staring at the muted television hanging on the wall, where Tamara's carefully curated face filled the screen. I never thought she'd go this far, I muttered. Riley didn't look up. You underestimated how much she needs to be the victim when she's not the hero. On screen, Tamara dabbed at the corner of her eye with a monogrammed handkerchief. The morning show host leaned in sympathetically. Claire has always struggled with feeling loved, Tamara said, voice cracking just enough to sound sincere. I tried to include her. I really did. But she chose isolation. My hands clenched. I felt the burn in my throat before I realized I was biting the inside of my cheek. That's rich, I hissed. Don't, Riley said gently, walking toward me. You want to hit back. That's what she's counting on. She's dragging me through the mud, I snapped. And the media's eating it up. Yes, Riley said, lowering the tablet. Because that's the game she knows. Emotional currency. Public sympathy. Your silence is power right now. Don't trade it for rage. My inbox dinged. Legal counsel. Claire, the email read. We've received notice that Tamara Alden has retained a crisis PR firm and is exploring defamation litigation. Please advise how you'd like to proceed. I dropped my head into my hands. It was high school all over again. When I tried to expose the rigged scholarship process, I'd been suspended for disruption. I hadn't fought back then. I'd swallowed it. Let them paint me as bitter jealous. I'd let it pass. But not this time. Riley watched me cautious. I'm calling a press conference, I announced, standing. No, she said instantly. I froze. That's what she wants. Riley continued. A public fight. A spectacle. If you step into the spotlight now, you legitimize her narrative. So I stay quiet now. You stay strategic. She stepped closer. You don't swing back. You sidestep. Shift the terrain. My desk phone rang. I ignored it. Then my cell vibrated. Caller ID, Mom. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Elaine's voice came in low, clipped. Tamara is spinning herself in circles. I just spoke to her. I didn't speak. Just waited. She's doing this because she's cornered. Not because she's right. My throat tightened. That doesn't make it any less damaging. Elaine paused. No, but it means she's afraid, which means you're close. The call ended without further pleasantries. I looked at Riley. Then we give her what she's not expecting. What's that? I reached for my laptop and drafted a message. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't a legal rebuttal. It was an invitation. To Tamara. For dinner. Private. Off record. Just us. Riley raised an eyebrow as she read over my shoulder. You're not just fighting her, she said quietly. You're saving her from herself. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to restore balance. The room was stark, no wood-paneled prestige, no ornate portraits of Alden's past, Just a long glass table, 2 chairs, a pitcher of water, and the kind of quiet that demanded something more than noise. I had requested this meeting myself. No lawyers, no advisors, just 2 sisters and decades worth of unfinished sentences. Tamara walked in 5 minutes late like always. She wore navy, a color she used to say made her feel invincible, but tonight her posture betrayed the weight on her shoulders. She didn't offer a greeting, just a nod as she sat across from me. I watched her for a moment, remembering the last time we'd been in a room alone together. I'd been 15, clutching the first lines of code I'd ever written. She'd looked at the printout, then looked at me, and said, "Cute." But real power isn't in hobbies. That line had echoed in my head for years until now. "You didn't have to come," I said. "I know," she replied, "but I couldn't. Not come." For a beat, silence stretched between us. Not hostile, just cautious. "This isn't a trap, Tamara," I said softly. "There's no press outside, no board members waiting to watch you squirm. I asked for this because I think we need to stop." She scoffed. "You won." "No," I shook my head. "I didn't win. We lost, both of us. You lost control of the legacy you cared so much about. I lost 20 years to trying to prove I deserved to exist." Tamara's eyes flickered. She glanced at the pitcher of water but didn't pour. "So what is this, a peace treaty?" "It's an evolution," I said. "I want you to step down from the board. Voluntarily. Publicly. I'll offer you a role as honorary advisor, ceremonial, no voting power. And in exchange, I won't pursue legal action over the misappropriation of funds from the family trust. I'll keep the internal audits private, and I won't block your future business endeavors under your own name." She leaned back, slowly calculating. "You're offering me exile with dignity. I'm offering you the option to write your own ending to this chapter." Tamara didn't answer right away. She looked away from me, out the glass window where the skyline stretched like an indifferent witness. "You know," she said quietly, "people always assumed I was ruthless because I wanted to be. But it wasn't a choice. Being the perfect Alden wasn't a performance. It was survival." Her voice cracked a little, and I saw something I'd never seen in her before. Not weakness. Not defeat. Humanity. "I remember," I said gently, "you were 10 when Mom told you you had to represent the family. I was 7, and invisible." She gave a hollow laugh. "You never were. I just didn't know how to share the spotlight. Or even that I should." Another silence. This one, softer. "I still remember that night," I said. "The night I stayed up teaching myself BASIC on that second-hand laptop Halden gave me. You found me at 2 a.m. and told me I'd never build anything that mattered." Her head bowed slightly. "And you did anyway." I opened the folder I had placed on the table. A simple set of papers. 1 page, really. "This ends with your signature. And a new beginning." She stared at it, unmoving. Then wordlessly she reached for the pen. Her hand trembled only slightly. When the ink dried, she slid the page back toward me. "I hope you know," she said, voice steady again, "this isn't surrender." I folded the paper. "This isn't surrender. It's evolution." The room wasn't built for truth, but tonight it would echo with it. I walked into the Alden drawing room with my head high, though my stomach felt like it was turning somersaults. Crystal chandeliers threw warm gold across lacquered wood and velvet. The room wasn't unfamiliar. It had hosted countless birthdays, anniversaries, and charity galas under our family name. But tonight was different. Tonight, truth would finally take a seat at the table, whether they invited it or not. Tamara was already holding court at the head of the room, surrounded by familiar faces from the Alden Legacy Trust Board. Her tone was honeyed, measured, every word perfectly calculated. She held a printed report, her version of the Trust's quarterly health, and it was as expected fiction dressed in Excel formatting. Her slides glowed on the projector behind her, all polished and selectively framed. I waited at the side with Riley, who gave my arm a reassuring squeeze as the moderator announced me. I stepped forward as Tamara was finishing her pitch. The applause was polite, some genuine. Walter looked pleased, probably expecting me to thank the family for the opportunity to play the dutiful daughter. Elaine simply sipped from her glass, unreadable as always. "I'd like to thank the board." I began, scanning the room, "for granting me a few moments to discuss Horizon's upcoming position in the family portfolio." Tamara arched a brow. I wasn't aware Horizon was on the table. You will be, I said calmly, and clicked the remote. The first slide appeared financial statements cross-referenced with internal memos. Not mine. Theirs. The data was meticulously organized cash flow anomalies, diverted dividends, and a trail that pointed unmistakably toward misuse of trust funds. At first, no one spoke. Then, as I moved to the second slide screenshots of internal emails, the murmurs began. Let me be clear, I said, steadying my voice as I advanced again. These records show that several allocations within the Alden Legacy Trust were deliberately rerouted to personal accounts under the guise of project reinvestments. Horizon's recent audit conducted independently discovered inconsistencies when reviewing pending partnerships, specifically Northwell's interest. The room tensed. I saw Walter shift forward in his chair. His eyes flicked to Tamara, then back to me. I knew that look. Doubt. Tamara laughed nervously. I think we're reading this too literally. Claire's, well, she's passionate, but these aren't the full story. Context matters. Absolutely, I replied. That's why I included full context, timestamps, chain of custody, third-party verification. I paused. Then, with a click, I brought up the final slide. A scanned document filled the screen, an amendment to the trust signed and notarized by Halden Alden in 2020, 6 months before his passing. It transferred majority control of the trust's assets to me upon his death. My name clear in bold, the notary's seal gleaming beside his signature. There was silence, thick, crushing. Even the air felt like it had collapsed inward. Walter's jaw clenched. He leaned toward Elaine, whose face had lost all its usual control. Her voice, barely above a whisper, was audible in the hush. Did we lose everything? I stood still, letting the moment stretch. Not because I wanted to gloat, but because this was the beginning of balance. She didn't speak for 5 full seconds. That's how I knew it hit her. The silence stretched like a taut wire between us, vibrating with every unspoken word. For once, Tamara had no rehearsed response, no polished deflection, no instant rebuttal cloaked in corporate jargon. Just stillness, the kind that followed a fracture. I watched her as she blinked rapidly, her lips parted just enough to suggest a reply might be forming. But nothing came. The murmurs in the room had died. Even the rustle of papers ceased as every eye turned toward her, waiting for a reaction that refused to arrive on schedule. She looked older in that moment, no longer the unflappable, icy executive who always had the room dancing to her rhythm. Under the soft lighting, the edges of her composure frayed. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like the little sister sitting in her shadow. I felt like the one casting it. Tamara took a breath, shallow and uneven, then another. I half expected her to lash out, to weaponize emotion, twist the moment into a new narrative. But instead, she did something rarer. She folded her arms, dropped her gaze, and said, "So, what now?" I didn't answer immediately. I turned to face the room. Walter Riley, the legacy board. Their expressions ranged from stunned to watchful. Elaine sat motionless, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. No one moved. "I propose a transition," I said clearly. "Effective immediately, Horizon will no longer be under the influence of legacy favoritism or backroom agreements. We move forward with transparency and merit." A quiet cough from the far end of the room. No objections, no applause either. Just the heavy breath of inevitability. I stepped toward Tamara and laid a leather-bound folder on the table. "This is a structured exit. You retain your equity. Your title shifts to honorary advisor with no operational oversight. You're recognized, but no longer in control." She stared at the folder as if it were a coiled snake. "And if I refuse," I didn't blink, "you won't. You're too smart to burn the house just because you no longer hold the keys." Tamara's mouth twitched, something between a smirk and a sigh. "You always did wait for the perfect moment to strike." "No," I said softer. "I waited until I had something worth protecting." A long pause. Then she nodded just once. Her hand reached for the pen with a hesitation that wasn't fear, it was grief. Not for the power she was losing, but for the myth of herself that was unraveling. She signed. The board stirred. One member clapped slowly, unsure if it was the right time. Riley leaned forward, lips pressed tight, nodding toward me in quiet support. Walter didn't look at me. He stared at the document, then at Tamara, then at his drink. The bottom of the glass seemed to hold more answers than any of us could give him. I walked over to Tamara and picked up the signed memorandum. Our shoulders brushed. She didn't pull away. I stepped beside her as she collected her clutch and prepared to leave the room we had both once watched from the periphery, her from the center of attention, me from the margins. We reached the elevator in silence. She pressed the call button and stood stiffly, chin high. Just before the doors opened, she turned to me. "You really did become someone." I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because for once, silence said it best. After the storm, all that's left are the things worth rebuilding. The morning light filtered softly through the wide glass panels of my office, casting long golden stripes across the hardwood floor. For the first time in weeks, the building felt quiet, almost reverent. No buzzing phones, no tense meetings, just me, a mug of strong black coffee, and a clean slate. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of dark roast ground me. After everything, silence felt earned. Riley entered without knocking, holding a folder and 2 fresh croissants. He placed one beside my mug and gave a small, knowing smile. "Peace offerings," he said. "Croissants are peace now," I murmured, managing a faint smile. "They are when you've declared war on your entire bloodline," he replied and sat across from me. The Horizon Legacy Fund launch packet was already on my desk. Neatly printed, securely bound, and bearing the new crest, a stylized H, shaped like a rising horizon. We were no longer the shadow of Alden Holdings. We were something of our own making. Lisa joined us a moment later, still in her commuter sneakers. "Got a moment?" she asked, breathless. "I've been working on an employee equity model. I think we're ready to roll it out." I waved her in. "Let's hear it." She walked me through projections, stock options scaled to tenure, a loyalty multiplier, automatic profit-sharing triggers at benchmark years. It was elegant. I approved it on the spot. "You don't want to run it by legal?" she asked, half surprised. "I trust your instincts," I said, "and trust is our new currency." Lisa blinked, then grinned. "I'll write that on the wall." After she left, the room felt even brighter, but the real weight of the morning hadn't arrived yet. The call from Elaine came just past 9. I didn't answer immediately, just watched her name pulse on the screen like a slow heartbeat. When I finally picked up, her voice was neutral, almost distant. "I found something," she said. "A letter. From Halden." I froze. "To me?" "Yes." "I never mailed it. I wasn't sure you'd want to read it. Can you send it?" "It's already on the way," she replied. "Couriered. You should have it in an hour." When the envelope arrived, it bore Halden's handwriting, bold, angular, unmistakable. I hesitated before opening it, as though the paper might burst into flame with everything unsaid. The letter was dated 2 weeks before his stroke. "Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone or too far gone to say these things in person. I've watched you build. Not for praise, not for applause. You build because you see what needs to exist. That's rare. That's legacy. You were always the plan." H. I read it twice. Then again. I didn't cry, but the air around me felt thicker. I slipped the letter into the top drawer of my desk. On top of it, I placed the manila folder Riley had labeled 2024, realignment. A new year. A new foundation. Riley came back in, noticed the letter, and asked nothing. Instead, he said, "You know, it's weird. What is you always had the reins? They just didn't notice you holding them." I didn't reply. I just looked out the window at the skyline, still jagged, still chaotic, but also ours. You can inherit walls, but you have to earn doors. I tugged lightly at the cuff of my charcoal gray suit, the same one I wore at Dad's birthday when they sat me outside. Today, though, I walked into Hudson Yards through the main entrance, past the velvet ropes and murmurs of recognition. It was the Finance and Innovation Summit, the year-end gathering of minds that shaped economies, and I was the closing keynote. The foyer buzzed with voices, camera clicks, clinking glasses. Riley handed me a tablet with the updated deck and whispered, "The press pool just doubled. Vance confirmed CNBC's here." My eyes skimmed the screen, but I wasn't really reading. I was remembering. remembering Tamara's voice saying, "You're not built for boardrooms," as she held court over investors I had researched. Remembering my younger self hiding in data to avoid being dismissed in meetings. Remembering that birthday, her voice ringing into the microphone while I was escorted to the patio like a delivery driver who stayed too long. Not today. On stage, the house lights dimmed. A spotlight bloomed across the podium. I stepped into it not as an intruder but as the architect of the room. "Good afternoon," I began. When I founded Horizon Real Assets, it was never about control. It was about clarity. Power isn't given, it's built. And it's time we redefine how we build. I walked the audience through Horizon's transformation. From a discreet consultancy to a flagship firm stewarding billions in real estate innovation, I showed them the new grant program's community reinvestments and tech-forward partnerships that would make Horizon not just a player, but the blueprint. Then came the question I knew would surface. A hand rose from the third row, a reporter I recognized from the Times. Sharp suit, sharper tone. "Ms. Alden, how does your family legacy influence your direction?" Some say Horizon is a response, not an initiative. I let the silence stretch just long enough for the oxygen to thin. "My family taught me many things," I replied. "Discipline, decorum, the art of looking like you belong even when no one tells you that you do. But Horizon wasn't born to answer them. It was born to outgrow them." I scanned the room and my eyes found her Tamara seated in the audience, her shoulders squared, expression unreadable. I lifted a hand slightly, gesturing to her. "There's someone here I want to acknowledge. My first competitor. And my sharpest lesson." Tamara blinked, stunned for a moment, then gave a small nod. The audience murmured. No applause. Just the shared awareness that something unspoken had shifted. Vance caught me at the steps leading down from the stage. "That line about outgrowing legacy. That's a slide in our investor decks now." I chuckled, my voice low. "We'll need a global deck soon." He raised a brow. "Let's talk global expansion. Asia Pacific first." The cameras flashed as we moved through the side corridor. My phone buzzed. A message from Riley waiting in the lounge upstairs. "Ready for phase 2, I typed back quickly. Just one word, always. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It hadn't been for a while. It was about showing up where the world said I couldn't be, and then rebuilding the room entirely. And I had just begun. They seated me outside. Now I build the table and decide who gets a seat. Snow fell in soft spirals as the rooftop of Horizon HQ lit up with warm string lights and the gentle hum of quiet celebration. I stood beside the terrace railing, the skyline stretched before me like a declaration. It wasn't the loudest party, but it was ours, and this time I wasn't watching from the edge. I was the one making the toast. Riley nudged my elbow. "They're waiting." I turned, lifting my glass as the entire Horizon team gathered under the canopy. Some still wore badges from that very first prototype launch. Others were new, full of fresh energy. All of them had walked through fire with me these past months. "This was earned, not inherited," I said, steady and clear. "Everything we've built, every mistake we learned, from every door we had to push open ourselves. This is ours. And tonight, I want us to remember that legacy is not what you're given. It's what you choose to leave behind." Cheers and clinking glasses filled the air. Lisa wiped her eyes discreetly. Even Vance, normally unreadable, cracked a rare smile. Then, like an echo from an old life, the elevator pinged behind us. I turned to see Tamara stepping out wrapped in a camel coat, her expression unreadable. For a moment, no one said anything. She approached me slowly, one hand in her coat pocket. "I won't stay," she said softly, glancing at the team. "Just wanted to give you something." She pulled a small envelope from her coat and handed it to me. Inside was a photo faded from the early 90s. Two girls sitting in the grass, a toy laptop between them. I remembered that day vividly, the first time I'd explained a code loop to her. She'd laughed and said I was pretending to be a real scientist. "I found it in a drawer," she said. "Figured. It might belong to you more than me now." I looked at the photo, then back at her. "This time, we don't compete." I said, my voice low. "We build." Tamara gave a small nod. "Maybe I'll learn how to follow." She turned and disappeared into the elevator again. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Riley came up behind me. "You okay?" I nodded. I think I'm more than okay. She smiled and handed me a flat package wrapped in navy blue. This is from the team. I opened it. Inside was a blueprint, our first office plan, annotated in red ink, coffee stains smudged into the corners. In the margins, every single team member had signed their name. At the bottom, someone had scrawled in block letters, "We followed you because you never asked us to." For a long moment I said nothing, just stood there holding it. The rooftop grew quieter as the others filtered back inside, leaving me alone with the skyline again. I stepped forward, resting the blueprint against the railing, and stared out over the city. This isn't the end. It's the proof. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A smooth voice on the other end. "Ms. Alden, we've reviewed your model. We'd like to license it. Globally." The woman once seated at the edge is now the one deciding who gets through the door. Claire didn't win by shouting louder, she won by showing the truth no one wanted to see. Because justice, though often delayed, doesn't lose its strength when it finally arrives. Like the final note of a long-forgotten song, its echo lingers long after the silence. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Like, share, and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Comment 1 if you felt seen. Comment 2 if you think there's more to be said.